On this edition of the NESN Red Sox podcast, we'll talk about the Red Sox reported interest in adding a starting pitcher and whether Zach Wheeler is a guy that they should target.
And we'll hand out our first half superlatives. That should be fun. And we'll give our bold predictions for the second half.
Swing and a miss, strike three, it's over. The Red Sox have won the World Championship.
The Red Sox walk it off. Mookie Betts. That ball is gone. The X-Man strikes. What a bullet by Devers.
I'd love to see the exit velocity on that one.
It's time to party.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NESN Red Sox podcast. I'm Ricky Doyle, joined by Dakota Randall. Dakota, we got the All-Star Game edition, All-Star Break edition.
Yes,
podcast.
Which means there's nothing going on.
No.
Or one would think.
Yeah.
One would think there's nothing to talk about.
What did you watch the All-Star Game?
I did.
I
I watched to the seventh inning and then I fell asleep.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty boring. Compared to, I really like the baseball All-Star Game, and usually I find it compelling even if the game's not that entertaining. I thought last night it was pretty, especially since the Red Sox really weren't well represented. Mookie Betts didn't even get an at-bat. I thought there were a lot of guys I've heard of them, but I was just like, the guy for the Mariners, Vogelbach.
Vogelbach.
Like, I'm like him. There were some random relievers that popped in there. I was like, this is, The game was boring too.
Yeah, the game was kind of boring. A clean game, though, for the most part.
Yeah.
I guess that's what happens when you put a collection of the best players in the world on the field.
I thought it would have been funny if that game was like one of these, just a baseball game that went 4.5 hours and 9 innings, like the perfect, like this is what's everything that's wrong in baseball.
Yeah.
But they actually squeezed it in, and
it was. I thought the broadcast, like some of the, like them talking to the guys mid-inning was sort of interesting, but it also lends itself to a lot of awkward moments.
Yeah, because Joe Buck isn't really the most. I mean, I like Joe Buck, but he's not really.
Yeah, like you talk. It's
the most creative.
Like I could do without Joe Buck talking to Francisco Lindor about like restaurants in Cleveland. Like what the hell?
Yeah, that was
from that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the whole idea is kind of interesting, I guess. Like Christian Yelich running around in the outfield while trying to talk to a broadcast.
Yeah, that was good. Thankfully they didn't have like Alex Rodriguez trying to do it, because that would have been really awkward.
Yeah.
Because that every time he does any sort of interview, it's cringeworthy. Even though I do like him as an analyst, his interviews are really awkward.
I also thought the little like CC Sabathia tribute or
that
whatever
was
they tried to
stupid.
do
Yeah.
by sending him out to the mound in the ninth inning and then getting the ovation. It was the most half-assed ovation I've ever heard. Like
I only saw the replay because I was asleep.
It almost felt like the crowd there. I mean, it was a close game, but still you checked out at that point anyways, and they just sort of like, it almost felt like they didn't know what was going on. But whatever, we're wasting way too much time on the All-Star game.
I did think the Carrasco moment was good. Was pretty
that
good.
was cool.
Anytime you get tears.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a tearjerker.
Yeah.
And the home run derby was good the other night. So
Home run derby was good, even though
not bad.
Pete Alonso basically won like the electoral college of the home run derby.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fraudulent win, but
Did you know he's nicknamed the Polar Bear?
I did. Well, I heard them. I didn't know until
they might have mentioned that 7,500 times.
Yeah, I didn't know until then, but
Yeah, well, you know now.
I think it would have been cool if if Vlad Guerrero can be in that game. I thought Michael Chavis should have been in that game, personally, or the home run derby. Sorry.
Well, maybe next year. Maybe you'll get your wish next year.
Just because you would have at
Speaking of
least
which,
gotten 5 swings and misses.
Let's talk about the Red Sox.
Okay.
This is the NESN Red Sox podcast.
Okay.
Strong finish to the first half. Winning 5-6, sweeping the Tigers in Detroit. Entering the break 49-41, 9 games behind the Yankees in the AL East, 2 games back with the second wild card spot with the Rays, Indians, and A's ahead of them. Pretty up and down first half. Underwhelming, I guess. Awkward. Really, however you want to describe it, it's just sort of meh. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
After obviously what we saw last season, and then just coming in with the highest of expectations for the most part, and it's just been sort of just this slow, methodical march to the break.
What grade would you give the Red Sox for the first
overall?
half? Overall,
because I actually did a Red Sox report card.
I know, I didn't read it.
That you can read on NESN.com.
Yeah, everyone should read it. I didn't read it yet, so I don't know what you did.
Shameless plug. All in all, C minus.
That's pretty good.
C minus, yeah. Because I'm
giving him an F.
You giving a total F?
F, just because, not because I'm like, there were some guys that have played well.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
trying to
she's
totally
generous.
rip them, but if a team with that much talent maybe only second to the Astros and the Dodgers kind of in terms of talent. For that team to be currently out of the playoff picture, that's a failure.
Yeah. No,
It's
I
100%
agree.
a
I
failure.
agree. It's a failure. I give them the maybe D+,
Also give 'em-
D+, C- range for the just for the sake of the ground that they, this thing had a chance to really go off the rails early, and the fact that they had still in contention is sort of a win in and of itself.
But even still, like I give them
They
also
started
kind
off
of
11 and 17.
Yeah, well, I kind of give them like an organizational F2 for the way they, for not resolving the bullpen issue sooner than this, having to go to Nathan Eovaldi. Like the way that whole thing was botched, the approach in spring training. I mean, that whole thing, the way they've done it, I think is it's just an F.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you for the most part. So let's get into that about the sort of organizational failure to address their needs coming into the season, and it's blown up in their face a bit. Now there's a report out there from the Athletics' Ken Rosenthal that the Red Sox are pushing to add a starting pitcher. Would prefer to act sooner rather than later, and are casting a wide net this coming just this week. What is your initial takeaway from this? Obviously, so much has been made about the bullpen struggles, but now we're hearing that they're pursuing a starting pitcher, and then this comes on the heels, obviously, of, as you touched on, Nathan Eovaldi being named the closer once he comes back from the IL. So what's your initial reaction?
Well, I mean, I touched on this in the last episode that I think, once Eovaldi got moved to the bullpen, I expected, unless I guess the ideal move is for them to go out and get an elite closer if they somehow could do that. I don't think they want to part with the assets to do that. I don't even know if they have the assets to win some sort of trade bidding war for that. So, I said it last week. I fully expected that this is where they would go, to go after a starter. Now the question is, what kind of starter? And for me, I think, and we've seen they've been connected to Zach Wheeler. I don't know what his contract situation is. I'd have to look. How much
he's a rental.
He's a rental?
Yeah.
So that's not what I would do, because I think what would be good for the Red Sox, and I'm operating under the belief that Rick Porcello will leave in the offseason, that you kind of chose Nathan Eovaldi over Rick Porcello, unless Eovaldi becomes the full-blown closer, but that's a different conversation. So I think an ideal thing for the Red Sox would be to get, not an ace-level starter, and maybe not even a number 2, but a solid number 3, kind of like a Rick Porcello, that has 1 year of control, that you can, that will help you this year in that 5th starter spot, help you, maybe serve in the rover role in the playoffs once they get there, because you're not going to have Eovaldi to do that anymore. And I also don't know if you can trust Rick Porcello this year, because he's just been that bad. And someone that can do that, and I think that you can send out there next year, because I do think there are some guys in the minors that they think could be legitimate contributors on the starting rotation within a year or two, whether it's Darwinson Hernandez. I know they're big on Tanner Houck. Jay Groom's obviously far away, but I think there are pitching prospects that they think could at least be middle to bottom of the rotation starters within a year or two. So I think you get a guy that can also be a placeholder for that, because everyone else is under contract. Again, I like Zach Wheeler. I'm not crazy about getting a rental. I'd rather get someone with at least 1 more year of control, but I don't hate it, because
for one,
I think there's a need. There's a clear need, and they need to get somebody.
I mean, it's pretty clear that they're committed to this Eovaldi as the closer experiment,
Right.
which, I mean, they left open the door upon announcing it that he could return to the rotation at some point, but they really envision him being in that role for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think we can assume that he's going to be there for better or for worse.
And the more and more I think about it, it has to be due to some sort of physical limitation, and not just
he
just the
can't
need
gear it
for a
up.
closer.
He can't build it back
that
up.
they're trying to squeeze something out of this season, and the only way that they're able to do that is by putting him in a relief role, which is, I think it's dangerous. I think you're playing with fire a little bit.
It's a disaster scenario for that contract.
I would hope that they wouldn't roll him out there and put his health in jeopardy, his health as it relates to next season and beyond in jeopardy, just for the sake of for the remainder of this season. But
yeah, I don't think they would do that.
I don't think so either. But it is certainly, for a guy who's never worked in that capacity. I mean, outside of, we saw what he did in that rover role that you mentioned in the playoffs last year. But beyond that, very limited experience out of the bullpen. So it's sort of uncharted waters he's going to be navigating. I mean, can he pitch back-to-back days? Can he pitch 3 games in 4 days? That's going to be a weird dynamic, I guess, to watch.
If it does hit, though, if he does well, it could legitimately be a season saver, because you have to figure he's somebody that could give you multiple innings a lot.
It's a desperation move. It's a Hail Mary.
It is.
It's absolutely a Hail Mary.
But if he's the Red Sox haven't had a guy that can be a multi-inning closer in a long time, because Craig Kimbrell, notoriously you could not do it. He never went longer than 1 inning.
Right.
So the Red Sox haven't had that luxury, and if Eovaldi can more often than not come in the 8th, and then you really slide people down to where they should be. Matt Barnes to the 7th, which is what he is. He's not a setup man. He's not a closer. He's a 7th inning reliever. Ryan Brazier even further away from that. All these guys, they're much more suited to be, middle relief guys. And Eovaldi, if he takes the role and he runs with it and he stays healthy, I think he really could make a huge, huge difference. But it's just such a big if.
Yeah.
And who really knows?
And it's just, another thing I'm thinking of when you see this report out there that they're going after starters, that, their off-season approach, as if it wasn't evident already, but this just really magnifies it, just completely blew up in their face. It was pretty clear, their unwillingness to go out and address the bullpen, despite losing Craig Kimbrell and Joe Kelly, was, basically they decided, all right, while other teams are emphasizing their bullpen, we're going to go ahead and look to separate ourselves by building an elite rotation.
Right.
And they seemingly did that by bringing back Eovaldi. And now that ship has sailed on this season, it was almost like they tried to think outside the box and go against this market trend that we're seeing over the last couple of seasons, with starters being devalued a bit by just teams going out and throwing money at relievers. Right. And it's been obviously to their detriment. I guess in theory it's okay, but if you're going to do that, you need 7-8 innings from these starters, and instead they're just getting middle-of-the-pack production. 18th in innings pitched from their rotation, 18th in ERA, 15th in WHIP. It has just been the most ho-hum starting rotation, especially relative to its talent level, and that has just set them so far back, because obviously that has a trickle-down effect on the bullpen, which has been, see, this is why I don't get pissed at the bullpen. The bullpen might stink, but the talent isn't really there. The rotation will stink, and the talent is there.
Right.
So it's just a huge missed opportunity by the Red Sox to leverage one of their perceived advantages over the Yankees, over pretty much every team in the American League except for maybe Houston and Cleveland, maybe. Cleveland.
Well, that's why I look at it.
Rotation is pretty good. But
yeah, well, and it's just this weird juggling act they tried to pull, where I think they looked at it and said, well, we don't want to be over the luxury tax again. We don't want to do that. We're going to try and stay under and not throw a bunch of money at a reliever. They prioritized Steve Pearce over getting a reliever, which of course, I think we all can agree was a bad move. I think we even thought that at the time. And so I think they kind of looked at it and said, well, when we'll get to the deadline and add somebody then, and we'll figure it out, and we'll stay under the tax. And it just didn't work out, because in the meantime you were blowing games left and right. And it might not even matter if you get a reliever or who you trade for at the deadline, because right now you're out of the playoffs, but not only by 2 games, granted. But like you said, they went into it and they said, let's try and pull a fast one on everybody.
Yeah.
And
you're all throwing money at these relievers.
Yeah,
all right. Well, we're gonna bolster our rotation.
It came off like they thought they were the smartest guys in the room,
which was
is
sort of an old school way of looking at it. If you're throwing all the money at the rotation and in the hopes that your bullpen holds up, and it's such a Dave Dombrowski way to look at things. Historically speaking, he's struggled to build a bullpen, and that was evident even last season. They won in spite of their bullpen last season.
It's just the problem was, you can do that if you have some proven relievers. Everybody had this inflated view of Ryan Brazier and Matt Barnes because they had a couple good outings in the playoffs, and these guys are what they are. Matt Barnes is a quality reliever, but we had no reason to believe that Ryan Brazier could do this. I had high hopes, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, how do I know that Ryan Brazier is going to turn out well? Brendan Workman has never, been able to do anything. He's doing well this year, but to go in with those guys and to think that they were somehow just all going to be able to get the job done collectively, it was just foolish, because you had no reason to believe that. There wasn't, you had no proven commodities in there. At least if the Yankees tried to do that, let's say, they've had somebody like David Robertson who they could throw out there and be like, well, at least we have this guy.
Right.
The guy that we know can do it. You don't even have that in the Red Sox bullpen. So it just, from the whole thing, the approach to it was just so bad, and it's extra interesting or extra disappointing because it's on the heels of a World Series championship. You should try and maximize that. And the whole thing with the hangover and all this stuff, it's true, sure, but the Astros won the World Series. They came back the next year and won 100 games and made the ALCS. They're one of the best teams again this year. So it's just, I hate that excuse, because it's well, you have the talent to avoid that. It shouldn't be an issue. I hate.
And also, if you were, the fact that they did prioritize the rotation and seemingly thought to themselves, all right, let's not throw money at relievers. Let's make it a point to bring back Nathan Eovaldi. I mean, that's a risk in and of itself, given the red flags that come with him. Like, I understand that, the upside's there. Clearly, he steps up in the big moment, as we saw on the big stage last year. But, like, I don't know, you're really pigeonholing yourself into this philosophy of building the rotation, but doing so by committing a lot of money and putting a lot of stock and just relying a lot on a guy who had 2 Tommy John surgeries, and there couldn't have been any more red flags.
Especially when you could have not signed Nathan Eovaldi, not signed Steve Pearson, signed DJ LeMahieu, and maybe another really good reliever, like Craig Kimbrell or something. I don't know. It's just, I give them credit for trying to pull this off, because I think the Red Sox look at it and they say, down the road, we got Mookie Betts coming up, we got JD Martinez potentially coming up. We've already locked up Bogarts and Christian Vasquez, and we have Rafael Devers under team control for a while, so I think they're good there. But and they signed Chris Sale, but I think they looked at this and thought, well, we don't know how wide open our window is going to be for a while. So, but we know we need to plan for the future a little bit. So we're going to try and accomplish both. This trying to have your cake and eat it too is sort of like the Celtics are doing there for a while.
Yeah.
And it's admirable, but it's just, you could do that if you were in some crap bag division, but you're in the AL East. You're against the Yankees, and the Rays are really good. I mean, it's hard to pull it off. There are a lot of good teams out there right now. You can't just pull a fast one on everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you look at the report now, and they're out there getting a starter, and I completely understand that. I mean, I mentioned this even a few weeks ago before the news broke of Eovaldi moving into the closer role, that I wouldn't hate them going out and getting a starter. I mean, I just feel like there always seems to be the situation where you think everybody's healthy, you think you have too many starters, and the next thing you know, you're piecing together the back end of the rotation. So I always thought starting pitching should have been on their radar as they approach this trade deadline. Obviously, it's of even greater importance now with Eovaldi, the closer, and that 5th spot just being an absolute crapshoot.
I just have no idea what they could even get, like, with how unwilling they obviously are to spend money, and I don't know how much they could send back in a deal. So it's like, I mean, it's not going to be somebody like Madison Bumgarner or anybody like that.
Guess,
so it's just.
I mean, my guess is they looked at this market, both the
like
starters
Jeff Suppan?
and the relievers,
Is that what we're doing?
And sort of weighed the cost of acquisition, being the prospect capital you got to give up, the potential salary absorbed, all those things, and thought it also probably factored in the upside of the arms available on both sides of the spectrum, and determined that their chances of finding a reasonable deal for a starter are greater than their chances of hitting on a reliever.
Right, because the bidding wars for relievers at the deadline are so intense, and the Red Sox, while I think the system is improving, it's still not what other teams can offer.
To me, it feels like they're looking for this year's Nathan Eovaldi.
Yeah.
More or less. I mean, to go out, get a guy who's a rental with minimal salary.
Maybe Zach Wheeler could be that.
And that's why I like the Zach Wheeler. I like the potential for that a lot. I think that there's been a couple of reports out there saying that the Red Sox are among the teams interested in Zach Wheeler of the Mets, earning just under $6 million for this season. As I mentioned, a rental, so he fits into that whole financial crunch that the Red Sox are in.
I think they're they're going to really try and identify somebody who can throw hard and strikes and try and really be kind of what Eovaldi was in the bullpen in the playoffs last year. Because, I mean, I think once you get in the playoffs, you're still ideally going to have a rotation of David Price, Chris Sale, hopefully Rick Porcello. Maybe it is Zach Wheeler. I don't know. But
I think
maybe you do it over.
I really like the idea of getting Zach Wheeler, but I don't think you can get Zach Wheeler and not do something to address the bullpen. I think you need to do both.
But you still need to do both.
Because one, I'm not sold on Eovaldi coming in and being the shutdown guy in the ninth.
Yeah.
Until I see it, I'm going to be very skeptical of that. We haven't seen it, and I'm just not sure if how good he's going to be for that role. He doesn't post huge strikeout numbers. Granted, he's got the velocity, but who the hell doesn't in the ninth inning these days?
I think what they would probably try and do is target somebody who has closer experience in the past. Maybe now is more of a setup role, kind of like what Addison Reed was a couple years ago. Somebody like that who isn't the Zach Brittons of the world, but sort of that next tier below. someone that they can rely on, and hopefully that's your 1-2 tandem with him and Eovaldi, and get a starter. Those two things.
So
and hopefully maybe some guys come up from the minors in September, Hernandez, whatever, and they're ready. I don't have much hope for that based on what we've seen out of those guys so far. But I think that's kind of all they have to go on at this point.
It has to be. It's sort of a tough pill to swallow that you're looking for this year's version of Nathan Eovaldi when you have Nathan Eovaldi.
And that was so unique. That was such a unique situation.
It was. It was like
guys
you
that
caught
throw,
lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, guys that can come in, out of the bullpen in the World Series and throw 7 innings and be throwing 100 the entire time. Those guys don't just grow on trees.
But it just there's also just that underlying feel of like that you're doubling up on your efforts and just like it's just not an efficient use of resources to be searching for a Nathan Eovaldi when you have a Nathan Eovaldi.
Speaking of which, Jalen Beeks is having a pretty good year this year.
Well, so that was sort of where I was going to go.
Two guys who traded last year are two guys that could help you right now in Jalen Beeks and Ty Buttrey. Now, again, I'm not going to say that don't do those deals because obviously you would do them every time again because you won a World Series. But Ty Buttrey and Buttrey, whatever. And Jalen, I saw nothing out of Jalen Beeks, so I'm fine with that. But he is having a good year. He's got a sub-3 ERA, I think.
Jalen Beeks sucked when he was here. No disrespect to Jalen Beeks, but
what if he comes in here in September and just shoves?
By all means, he probably will. The way this season has gone, he probably will.
Yeah.
So on the surface, listen, I'm all in on the Zach Wheeler. I like the idea. I think he has really as much upside as any starter available on the market. I mean, you could throw Madison Bumgarner out there.
I say swing for it and get Madison Bumgarner. That's what I want. Something spicy.
But beyond him, and that's a rental too. That's certainly the splashy move. But Wheeler is a guy who's works deep into games. He's pitching in the 7th inning in 10 of 19 starts this year, into the 6th inning in 16 of 19 starts. The real knock on him traditionally has been that he's injury prone.
Right.
This isn't a long-term investment. This is just for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
so
I think it'd be a pure rental.
I'm good with rolling the dice a little bit. The question is, what are you giving up for him? If the reports are correct and saying that the Yankees are also eyeing him, you got yourself a little bit of a bidding war there. You're probably going to lose that bidding war.
Yeah, right.
Although I think the Yankees might aim a little higher. You might see
Unless
the Yankees
they identify
get in
somebody. I could see the Yankees totally getting Madison Bumgarner.
Getting Bumgarner or Trevor Bauer if he becomes available, although I think the Indians...
They've won one World Series in the past, 18, 19 years. They're sick of it there. This feels like the Yankees... I'm expecting the Yankees to go all in. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they made a big splash at the deadline. Not just... Zach Wheeler's a splash, but Madison Bumgarner, something else, I could see them doing that.
So last year when they got Eovaldi, the cost was, as you mentioned, Beeks, who was the number 15 prospect in the Red Sox system at the time. Had sort of that brief major league experience, which wasn't good.
Right.
I don't know what the cost is going to be for Wheeler. It's going to be, obviously, it's going to be capped by the fact that you're only getting him for a few months. But I would think it would be a little bit more than that.
It's probably going to be either Bobby Dalbec, Tanner Houck, something like that. It wouldn't be your number 1 overall prospect.
No, it wouldn't be that. But you're getting the track record for him this year is stronger than what you're getting from Eovaldi last year. When they got Eovaldi, he was really a wild card. He was coming off the injury, was just still sort of easing his way back into game action, and they just happened to knock it out of the park with another guy who was on a cheap salary, and things just sort of worked out. So I don't think you're going to be able to get Zach Wheeler for the number 15 prospect in your system. If you were, just for some context, MLB Pipeline has, this is like the 13, 14, 15 range. Brandon Howlett, Gilberto Jimenez, and Travis Lakins are your 13, 14, 15.
We watched Travis Lakins this year. Travis Lakins is not going to get that deal done.
Yeah. Sox Prospects has that range with Nick Decker, Durbin Feltman, and Danny Diaz. I would say those three are much more on the more intriguing end than MLB Pipelines.
I'd be surprised if they're willing to give up Feldman just because I think they want a closer of the future, and I think maybe they've identified him as potentially being that. Because it's not going to be Darwinson Hernandez based on his ability or lack thereof to throw strikes. So, I don't know. Well, what's interesting is they just moved Tanner Houck. I don't know if they permanently moved Tanner Houck, who was their first-round pick a couple years ago, if they permanently moved him to the bullpen or not, but he came out of the bullpen. He made the Eastern League All-Star team for the Sea Dogs as a starter, and he just went to the bullpen last week and gave up like 7 runs out of the pen.
It was a shaky first out.
Yeah, so I don't know what the deal is with him, but in general, I think they think rather highly of him as like a third, fourth starter.
I mean, they've said that.
I think it might be someone like that.
They view him as a possibility this season out of the bullpen. So
yeah.
Maybe that's a guy late in the season that you see.
And they need someone who can throw strikes. I think that's the biggest thing.
I want somebody established in here. So if I'm the Red Sox, I'm approaching this trade deadline, and unlike you, I don't mind if the starter's a rental. I know you want to prioritize somebody who's going to be in here next year as well.
I still want the same problem next year that you have right now.
Well, see, that's where I'm at with the bullpen. I think you go out and swing for the fences and bring in an established closer. I mean
maybe.
I think
they're just not. If they didn't pay Kimbrel, they're not going to do that because they have to pay somebody.
See, the thing with this bullpen is, I don't even know if it's so much. Obviously, a closer, somebody who could just be that guy in the 9th inning would be nice, but they just need an infusion of talent. You know what I mean? Like, this would be much easier if your rotation was performing up to expectations, and 2, you had more electric arms out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of. There have been some guys.
We talked about Ottavino a lot last year, and I think he just would have been perfect for this team. But the Yankees signed him for cheap money.
Just more talent. It's just what I would want. But
and people who can throw strikes. That's what I want. Strikes.
Yeah. See, but I don't know. You're concerned about the whole starter thing being an issue next year. I think I'm not ruling out Rick Porcello coming back. I mean, that's a tougher sell now that he's been awful for the most part.
But maybe that lowers his value. Maybe you can get him on a 1-year prove-it deal.
So, and if that's the case, and then Eovaldi reinserts into the rotation, and you run it back sort of with that starting 5, it's the bullpen for me. Just because sure there are some of these young guys that are coming up and they're having their cups of coffee, but nobody's really jumped off the page to me, and I just see this being an issue next year. And you have to address the bullpen this offseason, right?
Right. Yes.
Why not do it now?
I think here's what I think. I think the Red Sox I think they don't believe that they're really going to do anything this year in the playoffs. I think you say all the right things.
I think that's a terrible mindset to have.
I do too, but I think you also have to be realistic, and I think you sometimes have to look at it and say, this might not be our year. Like, yes, there's something to be said for swinging for the fences and always going all in, but you also have to exercise a little bit of caution in these situations. And I'm not, like, they're going to say all the right things. They're going to say, as they should, we're the defending champions. We have the right talent. We can go, if we get into the playoffs, anything can happen. And that's true, but I think there's all, like, I look at this team and I think it's just not their year. It's not a big deal. It happens. It's just not their year. And to just go and part with some of your best prospects or trade all these assets to get a closer, I just think it ignores the fact that some of these guys aren't showing up in the same way. It just doesn't have the same feel. They're just not the same kind of team. It doesn't mean they can't run it back next year and be the team that they were last year. I just think they should look at, if they can swing a deal that makes sense, it's fine. I just wouldn't go all in because I just don't think I really don't think anything you do at this point is going to result in a World Series because it just feels like it's not that kind of team. I think they secretly believe it too.
I usually am opposed to the idea of being very aggressive at the trade deadline. Like, I would tend to err on the side of keeping my top prospects, things like that. But that's in situations where you're just sort of making a minor augmentation to your roster. I feel like if you bring in an elite closer or somebody, an elite high leverage guy to put into that bullpen, I think that you add that and you add Zach Wheeler, whoever else you identify as that number 5 starter. I think that can be the clear difference between potentially winning a World Series and missing the playoffs entirely. And if there ever was a season to be aggressive, I think it should be the season after you win the World Series. Like, I would want you to go all in on defending this title because if you go out with a whimper,
yes, but it's just there's a reason why no one's ever repeated. And there's a reason why people don't repeat because it's hard. And I think they look at it and say, we're not going to repeat. In our heart, we know it. So let's not go crazy and do something stupid.
But I don't think it's something stupid. I mean, this isn't.
I think ideally for
an obvious flaw. This
it is
like this is.
But it's
holding
cheaper
you back.
to get that stuff in the offseason.
This isn't like a situation where, you're saying like, oh, we need a little starting pitching depth, and let's go out and get this mid-rotation starter. Like, this isn't a situation where this could be the difference in your season.
It's true, but
one guy,
it's also
or 2 guys.
You also have to look at the future. Like look at someone like Edwin Diaz, from the Mariners last year. If you went to try and get Edwin Diaz at the deadline last year, it would have cost you a top prospect. This year, if you were trying to get him off the Mets, because he got traded in the offseason basically as a throw-in in a deal, almost for nothing. I'm just so like.
Let me also say this.
You pay a much lower price in the offseason, especially as guys get closer to their contract years. Like if you trade a guy who has another year left, if you try to get him at the deadline, it costs more. But once you get into the offseason, the price goes down. I think the Red Sox would be smart to look at it and say, we'll wait until then because it's not. We're trying to rebuild this farm system, and if we can save some of those prospects by waiting to the offseason, I think the ideal scenario for them is let's get into the playoffs so it's not a colossal failure. Let's have a representative follow-up to the World Series, and then let's save our stuff and really make a splash and make things happen in the offseason. And we're also ignoring, and I'm not going to sit here and start workshopping Mookie Betts trades, but, I mean, the Red Sox have told you, they've said, we're not going to sign all these guys that are coming up. Well, of those guys, we've signed Chris Sale, Xander Bogaerts, Christian Vasquez is locked up, and if you look at the other guys, I mean, Rafael Devers, you don't have to worry about for a while. David Price, you don't have to worry, is under contract. I think they've made it pretty clear they're not going to sign Rick Porcello because they chose Nate Eovaldi. So that really leaves Mookie Betts or JD Martinez. And I think we've all speculated for a while that it's one of those two guys. And so are you going to let one of those guys walk or are you going to trade one of them? And I'm not saying you're going to do that at the deadline, but I think that's on the table at some point here. And you have to look at what are you going to get in that deal. And they might be looking at it that way and saying, rather than part with prospects for Will Smith or someone like that, we're planning a much bigger thing in the offseason, and we'll see what we get in that scenario.
Maybe you're right. But, I mean, I just look at this, and there's not really anybody that I'm in love with from a prospect standpoint. There's not.
There's a couple guys.
There's a couple guys that I'm higher on than some others, but I don't know. There's not a collection of guys that I just would deem untouchable.
No, I don't think you have anybody like that.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I just feel like, as I said, you have an opportunity now, and just overlooking your one fatal flaw, it's just, I don't know. They did it in the offseason, and if you're going to do it again at the trade deadline,
that's why I think they're going to do the Eovaldi thing. They're doing it. They're not going to change their minds on that. So I think what we said before, someone like an Addison Reed. I don't know who. I'm trying to think of guys out there right now that would fit that mold. Maybe it's Colomé from the White Sox, but again, there's going to be bidding wars for guys like that. So you're going to have to go, I think, a step below, and I think you could go get somebody like that. You don't have to give up Bobby Dalbec or one of your top, or Tristan Cassis or somebody like that for one of those guys. I think that's what you do. But to go out and say, well, those guys aren't even out there. Zach Britton's not out there. Aroldis Chapman's not out there. Will Smith is out there. Colomé's out there. There's no premier. Ken Giles is out there. There's no one out there that's like your future. We're taking care of this problem now. Like, I don't think there's anybody on the table like that. Jordan Hicks, we've talked about him.
Kirby Yates.
Yeah, I mean, are you going to send everybody for Kirby Yates? And the Padres, think they're a playoff team. So I don't really think anybody like that is out there. And the guys that are, you can't win those bidding wars. So you have to get the level below.
The Giles thing, just since you brought it up, you see the report this week saying that the Yankees and the Twins had asked or inquired about a package of Stroman and Giles.
Yeah, I did see that.
It's kind of interesting.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like the Yankees. I
they're gonna
something. I don't know if it's that deal, but I think.
I need Marcus Stroman on the Yankees.
That would be pretty cool.
And Ken Giles, for that matter.
That would be.
That is.
I don't know why would they need Ken Giles. Why that just feels.
The Yankees need to get either.
They have so much in that bullpen. They don't.
But it's just, why not?
I guess so.
Why not?
It's just that feels stupid. Like,
and he's under control through next year too, and I think I want to say Betances is up, and I
guess because Betances really hasn't.
So
given much.
It's sort of a kill two birds with one stone, but
it would really. I think that would be.
That's a deal I need to see.
If I'm a Yankees fan, that's what I want, because if they swing that deal, you have to look at them and go, that is the runaway World Series favorite.
Yeah, if they're not already.
A Yankees-Dodgers World Series would be awesome. If I'm not getting the Red Sox. Well, I shouldn't say it's awesome because I want the Yankees
Madison
to lose.
Bumgarner in pinstripes. That's juicy too.
That's juicy too because it could be a failure. It could go wrong for him. It could go sideways.
Oh, he could be a total asshat too.
He could. That Stroman deal would be great for the Yankees.
Do both. Get them all in there. Stack that team. Make them hateable again.
Stroman is the kind of guy that would join the Yankees coming to Fenway in September and the benches would clear. Something would happen.
That's what we need.
And I could see Michael Chavis charging Marcus Stroman in Yankee Stadium. I need that. I need that to happen.
All right, just so we can
not advocating violence, but
yeah, all right.
But a little bit.
Just so we can hone in on this. You're a thumbs up on Wheeler?
Yeah.
Or somebody of that ilk?
I'm a soft thumbs up.
So what's your ideal scenario for the Red Sox right now? The market is still materializing a little bit here as you sort of figure out who's in and who's out of the playoff picture. But what are we exactly 3 weeks removed from the trade deadline?
Yeah.
What's your ideal scenario for the Red Sox?
For what they get at the deadline?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's pretty clear they're not going to sit around with their hands.
I think it's what we've talked about. I think a Zach Wheeler type, someone with that type of talent would be great, and a second-tier reliever. But only if the price is reasonable. I'm not overextending myself, because I also think that would be enough to probably get you in the playoffs. And then once you get there, if Eovaldi's your closer, you're doing the whole rover thing again with all the starters. You hope that Matt Barnes and Ryan Brazier and Borkman sort of show you what they showed in the playoffs. I do too, but it just works, so it's hard for me to completely.
You got to get there first.
I do too, but I think this is the juggling act I think they're trying to play, and I kind of agree with it, because you got to try and plan for the future a little bit here. You can't get. I know it's you're either on one side of it or not. You either do everything. It's like we have this conversation about the Patriots all the time. It's, do you just throw a bunch of money at everything and load up the Patriots for Tom Brady's last run, or do you try and develop and to keep things down the road, keep the thing going? And with the Red Sox, I think they're trying to play both sides a little bit, and that's what I think they should do. I wouldn't throw everything at this right now, because I'd rather be competitive and have a good farm system and be in relatively the same position in the next 2, 3, 4 years than be in a horrible position in those years and then just go all in on this one and probably lose in the playoffs because you're not good enough. You're just not good enough this year. I could be wrong, but
not. I think. I don't know. I think you had the two pieces that I mentioned. You might be there. You might be good.
You might be. But you might be. But I mean, geez, your ace Chris Sale has to not be 3-9 or whatever he is. That's what I'm saying. It's like
a whole different.
Some of the stuff you look at and go, oh, we'll be all right in the second half. Chris Sale will be Chris Sale, even though he's never been a good second half pitcher. Rick Porcello will figure it out. No, he won't. He's Rick Porcello. We know what we're getting from David Price. You look at all these guys. Mookie Betts, he's going to turn it around. I don't think he is. He's having a down year. It's what it is. He's not just going to. I mean, maybe he can, but how many guys hit 260 in the first half and then hit 400 in the second half? When you have a bad year, you have a bad year. It typically doesn't just turn around because of the All-Star break.
Well,
and it's a shame because you have guys having career years like Christian Vasquez and Devers.
So let's do that.
You got a lot of guys that need to completely flip the switch, and I don't know if all that's going to happen.
Let's focus on the guys who are here now. We did this last year. I think it's a worthwhile.
Superlatives?
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile exercise to sort of take stock of what's happened to this point by dishing out. You already plugged the report card. Maybe we'll do some superlatives here.
Okay.
MVP and things like that. Who's your MVP at the
Devers.
All-Star break?
I think
this goes back to a conversation we had last week.
Well, because you're going to say Bogarts, but
probably going to say Bogarts.
But I think Devers, because I just think the impact he's made with the bat has just been so great that I think it's you've needed every bit of that offense with how bad the pitching has been. So for me, it's whoever's the best player on offense. And Xander Bogaerts is a close second, but Rafael Devers is up near the top of the league in hits. He's hitting rocket doubles all the time, and Bogaerts has been great. Don't get me wrong, but I think Rafael Devers has been that much better. And in a season when you've needed all that offense because your pitching's been trash, that to me is the MVP. And just the fact that he's become a good, average to good defender.
Yeah,
it's just the fact that you no longer have to.
It's remarkable that turnaround in season.
You know how bad it would be right now if you also still had to worry about butcher Rafael Devers at third base. How much of a problem that would be, but it's the fact that he has turned that thing around presents a ton of value in and of itself. So I think he's been that good.
I lean Bogarts just for the sake of consistency. I don't know, because Devers did sort of have those ebbs and flows in the early going where Bogarts has been pretty much wire to wire in the first half, their most consistent player.
Yep.
Which I think saved their ass on several occasions. I also, for a while, would have made a case for David Price, because that
he's on the list. He's on the list because he's been the most consistent.
He's on my short list of the two we've mentioned, Price and Christian Vasquez as well.
Well, and I was looking
He's
at
been
numbers
really
the
good.
other day, and I don't have them right in front of me right now, but you could very easily make the case that in the last year, since this time last year, that David Price has been your best starting pitcher. It's pretty clear cut.
I
think,
mean, there was that stretch in the beginning of the season where their rotation was god awful.
Yeah. And he was at least okay.
And he was serviceable, and he's been pretty good for the most part. In an otherwise down season for that unit, so I would definitely put him right up in the conversation, even if Bogarts and Devers are the guys that get more of the more critical acclaim, if you will. What was your biggest disappointment?
Chris Sale. I would say Mookie Betts, but Mookie Betts at least didn't just get paid. Chris Sale just got paid a big contract, and he's given you the worst season of his career. On the heels of a really poor second half and all these concerns about the shoulder and everything, I just think there's so many red flags there that I've kind of gone all over the place with this take this season. In the beginning, I said I'm done. I think Chris Sale is going to be a good pitcher, but you're never going to get the Chris Sale of old. In the middle of the season, it was kind of looking like it was trending in the right way, and now we're right back to the same thing. And I just think just because the velocity, you see it tick up to 95 to 97 here and there again, doesn't mean there's not still something wrong with his shoulder. And maybe it is just because he's got taken his foot off the gas and he's trying to control a little bit more, and I just, whatever it may be. But I just, listen, he's 3-9, and I think you've only won like 6 of his 17 starts, and I think he's allowed at least 5 or 6 runs in each of his last 3 outings at a time when you need to be winning every single game. And to his credit, he's owned up to it. He said, "I need to be better," and and he's very, very blunt about it, which is great. But he's been
you still need results.
I mean, he's been amazing at times. He has struck out like 18 in one game, but there's been times he's been flat out bad. And he's supposed to be your ace, the guy that you can rely on and say, well, we're having a crappy year, but every 5 days I know I'm going to win that game, because even if our offense doesn't show up, Chris Sale's going to hold him to 1 or 2 runs. And that's all we need. And it's just, he just hasn't given it to you. And so for those reasons, and primarily because he just got paid, I'd say he's the biggest disappointment.
A few guys that you could go with, a few guys that need some jeers.
Andrew Benintendi was my second.
That's my pick.
Okay.
I was going to say there's a few guys you point to, Steve Pearce being one of them, because he's giving you next to nothing.
Yeah.
Tyler Thornburg is now on his way out the door.
Yeah, we didn't even mention that. Tyler Thornburg officially released today by the Red Sox. So
if we're keeping it all-encompassing, biggest disappointment, I'm disappointed that Dustin Pedroia wasn't able to get back on the field.
Well, those are different kinds of disappointments.
Yeah, it's not disappointing in him. It's just a disappointment that we
makes you sad.
aren't able to see one last run, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you on the Benintendi thing. I mean,
this should have been the year where he had a good year last year, but the second half the power was gone. And this year you're thinking, all right, you've had 2 years in the big leagues, put it all together. You should be an all-star.
He should be on the Rafael Devers track.
Right, this should be his Rafael Devers
breaking
year.
out. And see, for me, I'm disappointed because not only have you not gotten to that next step, the breakout that you thought maybe would come this year, you're not even getting what he was last year, or really to any at any point in his career. You're getting a watered down version. The power is not there. Just you combine that with the defensive miscues between him and the outfield collectively. It's just been a weird season for him. And this is a guy who you're looking at. I mean, before the season, you're talking about a potential contract extension and If
there's any silver lining, it's that his price might have dipped a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, you talked about Mookie Betts' contract situation or whether he's going to leave after next year. If Andrew Benintendi emerges as a star this year, that makes it a lot easier. It's an easier pill to swallow.
Especially when you look at because that whole thing already looks easier because of what Rafael Devers has become and what you now see what Xander Bogaerts has become. I think they look at it and say, well, we don't want to lose Mookie, but we feel a little bit better about it now because we think the franchise could be in good hands with those 2 guys. Now, if you added Andrew Benintendi into that and said, we got now these 3 guys, all right, well, whatever, we can absorb Mookie or somebody leaving. But yeah, and the fact that Andrew Benintendi hasn't turned it on, and to me, it sort of reeks like I look at Benintendi and I just from what I've heard from him over the years and stuff, I just feel like it looks like he knows how good he is. He knows that he should be an elite level player, and I think in his mind he's probably thinking, if I do what I should do because I'm good enough, I'll get $200 million, and that's a huge thing in a guy's head to think. If I just do what I'm supposed to do because I'm that good, even if I just get to like 80% of that, I should get over $150 million, and it looks like he's just pressing big time because right now, and it's compounding because he's probably thinking, crap, like I'm I'm screwing this one up. I could be, really in for a huge payday, and that that gets to some guys and it doesn't get to others, and he might be a guy that it gets to. So.
See, he had a stretch last year, like I think it was like leading up to the All-Star break, where you really saw what he could become.
And then he had 14 homers in the first half, and then he had 2 in the second half. And what does he have right now? Like 3 or
7, I believe.
7. So he's got 7. That means he has 9 homers since the first half of last year.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for a guy, we've looked at him and said, this guy should be like, not Trot Nixon, like better than Trot Nixon. Like this guy should hit 290 to 300 with 25 homers. He's got that kind of swing, that kind of ability, and just haven't seen it. I still think you will, but it's
not
just
that impact player you're hoping for.
No, I think it's in there somewhere, but
biggest surprise.
Christian Vasquez,
which I guess kind of coincides with a little bit what we were talking about. But okay, Vasquez.
Christian Vasquez. I just think, I mean, come on. We all thought the guy was going to be a career like 230 hitter, and he's hitting 299 with and 852 OPS, which is 7 points off Mookie Betts. I mean, in many ways, you could say Christian Vasquez is having a superior season to Mookie Betts, which is crazy to think. I mean, he's probably been your 3rd best offensive player. I mean, he's in 299 with an 852 OPS. On-base percentage is just average at 332, but he's got 41 RBIs, 14 homers. The defense is still kind of hit or miss sometimes behind the plate, which is a little annoying, considering his reputation. But, I mean, the fact that he has turned into legitimately one of, the 5 best catchers in the game, right? I mean, how can you not say that at this point? If you take out, we don't know if he's going to keep doing it, but if you just in a vacuum,
I thought Vasquez was a good bounce back candidate this year. I thought the injury really screwed him last year.
This is just such a bigger
but yeah, it is. It's a huge step.
I mean, his
forward.
career high in homers was 5, and now he has 14. So
I'm going with Michael Chavis. I didn't think we'd see it this soon. And sort of, I'm not as high on him as a lot of other people. I think we're starting to see water find its level a little bit, like what he's gonna.
I have a different take on that.
What's your take on it?
Well, sure, water's found its level in that I think most of us look at Michael Chavis and he reeks of 250, 30 homers, which is fine. I think that's fine. What I was concerned about with, he got off to that hot start and then he started striking out a ridiculous amount. And, you're wondering, all right, is he going to go in the tank? What's going to happen here?
But he's bounced back.
He's bounced back.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still, with all the, we've looked at him sometimes and gone, man, he just looks lost right there. He's still hitting 263. That is, again, only 9 points lower than Mookie Betts. So he's in 263 with
this
an
might
800
be what
OPS.
he is as a player.
Yeah, and I just thought that for him to like emerge out of the slump and find consistency and sort of level himself this early on in his career, because it could have gone in the tank there once he started struggling. And for him to pull out of it,
so I guess that's what contributes to me picking him.
Yeah,
is the fact
I'm surprised that he did that more than I am.
I'm surprised. Yeah. One, how early he came up, and really that was driven by circumstance. I mean, they didn't really have any other choice. But, I mean, he was instrumental in them keeping, staying afloat.
Yeah.
I mean, his infusion of energy and just the power production, I mean, they would have been screwed without him. He's made an impact at 2 different positions. He saved their ass at second base, and now he's saving their ass at first base. And the defense at first base hasn't been all that bad, considering, like, where he came from. I just, it's more than I ever envisioned them getting from him this year.
What's interesting, I wonder, is when Mitch Moreland comes back, I just wonder, are you in a situation where Michael Chavis platoons with Mitch Moreland for first base, or does Michael Chavis platoon with Brock Holt or Marco Hernandez? I think is someone who has earned playing time now.
Yeah.
How does second base and first base shake out in the second half? It will be interesting to follow, because you got 5 guys jockeying for 2 positions between Holt, Hernandez, Chavis, maybe Pedroia, who knows, and then Mitch Moreland and Steve Pearce. It's just going to be interesting to see how that shakes out.
So that's my next question: is the most entertaining storyline? Either of the first half or going forward or whatever.
The most entertaining storyline for me is just the somewhat comical failures of the bullpen. Like because they won the World Series last year, I can laugh about it. And it's offered like a sadistic form, like some dark humor where I watch it and I almost root for it because I want to see how bad this can get. And it's just, I found myself a couple times with some of these meltdowns thinking this is just, it's entertaining in a twisted way. and because I don't think there's this much positive entertainment that they've offered you. So I think just watching how bad a bullpen can really be, and how horrible and it can really just fail, and it's been interesting.
I guess in that the same sort of on that same wavelength. This Eovaldi thing is going to be fascinating.
So going forward, I would say that's the most interesting storyline.
His insertion as the closer moving forward. The range of outcomes for this thing is just incredible.
Yeah, and it's going to be a riot when he comes in that first attempt and is throwing like 102 and mows everybody down. And then we'll see if he keeps it up.
I'm skeptical. I'd even venture to say a bit pessimistic.
I like it just because he throws strikes. I think he'll be all right.
But I think it's going to be fun.
It'll be fun.
It's for what has mostly been like a ho-hum sort of stand pat type of season, and just very methodical. This is just sort of a wacky outlier.
Yeah, the problem is can the bullpen get it to him? Intact, because all your blown saves this year have basically been in the 7th and 8th. So
defining moment thus far, for better or worse.
I just think the London series, everything that was, it perfectly summed up the first half for me. Just you had bullpen failures, you had Rick Porcello giving up 6 runs in the first inning, you had Eduardo Rodriguez laboring in one of those games, and he kind of turned it around. Then you had the offense showed up, and then they couldn't score the runners in scoring position. You did it against the Yankees. The whole thing was just how flawed. And it was a perfect just look into what this team is all about this year.
I'm going with the 17-inning walk-off loss to the Twins back on June 18th.
That was a tough one.
That was when they blew the lead in the 8th inning after Devers had homered in the 7th. They blew a lead in the 13th after Mookie had put them ahead with a home run in the top of the inning. And then ultimately Max Kepler walked it off with a single in the 17th. But that was a game where the Red Sox had 17 hits and scored only 3 runs. That speaks to their inability to cash in with runners in scoring position, which was a huge problem for early in the season. J.D. Martinez went 0 for 8 with 5 strikeouts, just an interesting little note. But that was also the game when David Price pitched pretty well, but lasted only 5 innings and threw 73 pitches, and there was that whole, is there something wrong with them? Or why did they take him out after the 5 innings? Yeah. And I thought that was just sort of a microcosm of the overall approach to the season of this, we can do this sort of thing and get away with it attitude. And it came back and it bit him in the ass because they then had to tax the bullpen for 12 innings, in which case, you reap what you sow, and they gave up the lead on 2 occasions. Also, it's just a loss to a good team.
Right.
You lost to the Twins. That was at a point where
you could have swept them.
They came in on a 6-game winning streak at that point. They took the series opener in Minnesota, so that was an opportunity to just continue building on something, and they just came.
To their credit, they came back the next night and won, though.
They did.
So that to me was, I looked at that and said,
but that sort of checked all the boxes. That loss.
That was a tough one. Another one for me.
Very long game. I think that happened at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I was cranky as it is.
My girlfriend goes to work at she gets up and leaves by 2:20 in the morning. So she was taken off as the game was finishing. And so I was like, all right, see you later.
All right.
One more for me. A sneaky candidate, Darwin's and Hernandez coming up and walking 9 guys, because I looked at that and said, boy, this is the best your farm system can do. This was your top pitching prospect is up here. This is appointment television. Let's see what your farm system pumped out for your best pitching prospect. And he goes out and walks 9 guys. Sort of reminded you that Darwin and Hernandez might be a good pitching prospect and for you, but you ain't got it like a Walker Buehler down there.
Right.
That should remind you that you don't have one of those guys, at least not yet.
All right, give me a bold prediction for the second half before we get the hell out of here.
Red Sox miss the playoffs.
Bold.
Well,
outside the playoff picture right now.
Right, but I just think I think most people are operating on this belief that they're gonna figure it out and sneak in there. I think they'll finish 5 games out. That'll be my bold prediction. I think they'll finish 5 games out. If you really want another one, how about they trade J.D. Martinez?
Wow. Well, I was gonna give you 2. One being that they trade someone noteworthy from their major league roster in a surprise deadline deal. I don't know if I'm going to say it's J.D. Martinez, but who knows? Somebody notable.
Yeah. What about
And my other one was just going to be that Tanner Houck is going to be the closer by the end of the season.
Okay. All right. Maybe.
You mentioned him earlier. The fact that they view him as a potential piece later in the season.
Okay,
I don't know.
Tanner Houck.
Let's get weird.
All right, cool. I think other ones maybe I'll throw it. I think Eduardo Nunez gets DFA'd. It's not really bold, but I think that's coming.
Especially with Marco Hernandez the way he's playing.
Pedroia retires in September.
And they just firing them off at
I had more. I was holding back. I had
incomprehensible clip. All right, now I got to slow you down. Let's get back to work.
Okay, all right.
All right, so we'll be back probably next week.
Yep.
It's good to touch base here at the All-Star break.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to tell the people?
No, I mean, listen, we got a big. I think we didn't even touch on it, but the Red Sox obviously have a couple of days off here, and then they get back Friday against the Dodgers. And
it's a nice series.
That's a good series. That's interesting. I mean, the Dodgers are really, really good. They're
Might be able to learn a lot from the first few days.
They're going to want a little bit of revenge. I think Cody Bellinger's great. I think you still match up pretty well with them. I think it's a good opportunity for the Red Sox to come out of the break, take 2 or 3, win Friday night, lose Saturday in the afternoon because just lay a wet fart, and then come out. I'm assuming Sunday night to Sunday night baseball, and take it to them. I think you might have Eovaldi back by then too. I think that's sort of been maybe not. I don't know. I have to look at the timeline. But either way, take 2 out of 3, and I think that could really, get them off on the right foot. But then it would be like them to go. I don't know where they're going after, but they could just get swept.
Just laying wet farts.
Yeah, just fat
just wet fart after wet fart. All right. I'm Ricky Doyle. That's Dakota
Oh,
Randall.
one more. I guess
for Jesus.
I'll say, since we're talking about wet farts, the defining moment.
Everybody's favorite topic.
The defining moment is the way the banner was raised on opening day. The wet fart opening banner raise where it just got pulled up in the most anticlimactic manner, sort of set the stage for what you're about to see for the next 3 months. The wet fart of a first half was,
It started.
Yeah.
All right.
If you can pick one image, it's that. Just wasn't pretty. That's all I got.
That's all he's got. Okay. Goodbye.